on this very important subject. I'd like my opening statement to be
Announce your name and
Commissioner Dave Miller, Commissioner down in Iron County. What I want to open with is the fact that we really are in a state of urgency regarding dealing with issues on federal lands. And I want to cite 4 examples, all of which are occurring in Iron County, specifically impacting our people. And I think that the moral of what I'm going to share really is evident in many of the counties across the state. But the first example is we have on the Dixie National Forest pretty much an annihilation of the forest as a result of bark beetle infestation. And we have had some fire issues, but we're on the verge of a catastrophic wildfire condition. In a pre-season combined work group meeting with the Color Country fire crew and the county and several of the entities in that area, including Bryan Head Ski Resort and Bryan Head, we talked about the condition of the forest and what we would do and which areas we would specifically want to protect if a fire did ignite. What was really telling to me was when every one of those federal agencies, entities, including our own state forest division, recognized that we can do nothing on federal lands unless we go through an extensive NEPA process that will take years and years and years. And it would be better if we have a fire in certain areas to let it burn. It's not a good management tactic nor policy. So I posed the question, should we not harvest the timber in lieu of the threat? And they said, we cannot do it because it'll take too long. So that's my first example. Second example, as many of you are aware, and I want to thank this any one of the legislative representatives here for supporting Iron County in an issue that had to do with the Endangered Species Act. It's probably not a well-kept secret that Iron County has been infested with the Utah prairie dog for some time. And we have made tremendous strides forward dealing with it, but it's all been driven locally. The solutions to increase the habitat, the solutions to increase the numbers and populations, to increase the quality of the life of those endangered species has been driven locally. And as I've been on multiple trips to DC or to the state legislature or within meetings with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it is very apparent that they cannot do the job because there's a pending suit every time that they turn around if they do anything that's not following their guidelines, including NEPA, including ESA, all their regulations. Next example, many of you are aware that we are one of many counties that have been impacted by the lack of management of the wild horse. Under the federal act known as the Wild Horse and Burro Act of 1971, they were given specific instruction that at any time the populations of the horse exceeded the AML, or the appropriate management level, the Secretary of the Interior shall, not might, but shall, reduce populations to said sustainable levels as described in the AMLs. So we have a condition now where the western part of Iron County and Beaver County and several other counties are completely decimated. The habitat is destroyed, and not only are the wild horses in danger of destruction, self-destruction, but all the incidental impacts and collateral impacts, wildlife, elk, deer, and one pending issue is the sage grouse. So we're going to have combined impacts, and again, I'm going to bring back this example. Why cannot the BLM do anything about it? Because they're going to get sued by a special interest group. Moving on to the next thing. Number 4, and this is actually probably the best example. Those are macro scale issues in our county. Here's a micro scale issue. we had a group that wanted to come into Iron County and run a race. They call themselves the Southern Nevada Off-Road Enthusiasts. They wanted to run a race strictly on existing roads in Iron County, some of which go through public lands on the BLM lands, but they're roads that we manage for the most part. As they came in and made their proposal, the local Cedar City field office said, well, we have to go through a 6-month process, and we suggested, it'd probably be a good idea to move this a little quicker. And they accommodated somewhat, but they came back with a permit that would have cost this organization $25,000. Now, that's just for a 2, maybe a 3-day event that had a positive net impact to our county of $1.3 million. And yet they wanted to impose a $25,000 permit so that they could go down and send specialists who are trained in archaeological findings, wildlife findings, and all these other findings to walk outside of the roadway in case they roll or end up driving off the road or whatever. And when I saw, and the other commissioners, we saw the cost breakdown, we called the Cedar City field office manager to speak with us and explain how she could come up with such outrageous costs. Well, let me take a look at this, she said. And she came back $10,000 less within just a few days, explaining that, well, we found some ways we could do this a little cheaper. This is the example of non-accountability and really a lack of interest in helping make things a positive experience in our community, in our county. All of these have one close tie. If they would not go through this NEPA process or these other processes, such as in the case of the Southern Nevada Off-Road Enthusiast interest, they would get sued. In every case, there's one underlying issue, and that there are, and it is this, that there are individual groups who make a lot of money on the back of U.S. taxpayers because they enrich themselves by suing the federal government. If our lands in the state are managed by the state and they're no longer federal lands, it takes away a lot of these problems. Now we're going to have issues. We do, and I concur with John Jones, we need to have a good management plan in place. We need to learn from the mistakes that the federal government has made in their mismanagement. But we have got to absolutely take this forum for all these nonprofit organizations that have they get more profit than anybody I know because of the model, and take it away from them and let us experience the beauties of the state under the management of good leadership in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the commission?
Representative Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just kind of taking them as a whole, but maybe taking the wild horse issue as an example, how would we do it better? How would we deal with the wild horse issue? How would we deal with the forest fire issue to do it better so that we get better access, better health, better productivity? Any thoughts or suggestions on
To
that?
speak specifically to the wild horse issue, there already is an environmental impact statement that's been, that helped determine the appropriate management levels. If the federal government could follow their own law, which they can't because of a rider that exists in the appropriations subcommittee that restricts them putting any funds towards the management of the horse, if there's a possibility of that horse being euthanized or managed in any way that's not basically placed through adoption, then they can't touch it. So they're going to just let the horse population increase to the point where they're going to die because of their own starvation, or starvation on the lands that are just decimated. There's no management. So what we do is we have to put in place a good, smart management program, and what that exactly looks like, I think there's a lot of discussion on how to do that, but we keep it at those levels. There's a low level and a high level in the AML. And when they hit the high level, we take those steps to remove those numbers down to the low level. That way we have the benefit of those beautiful horses. The ranchers enjoy them, we all enjoy them, but then they don't destroy the range that hurts everything.
Okay, I think you sent me a copy of that statute at one point, and as I read it, it said that the secretary shall remove the horses immediately.
Correct.
Is that?
That is exactly the language.
And I understand you've had some negotiation and things with the local officers and perhaps the state director of the BLM. What reasons, what are they telling you as to why they're not following their own statute that says they have to remove the horses and get that back down to the appropriate AML immediately?
Dealing with the local and even state representatives of BLM was an exercise in futility. It was just a waste of time. When we went back to DC, we got straight answers. We went and we spoke with Greg Shoup, and he specifically told us that they cannot do anything unless the rider is removed congressionally. So it's a congressional act that has to be fixed. And if they have no jurisdiction, if the states were managing it, then there wouldn't be this issue. And the only thing that they can do until that rider is removed is they have to play this balancing act, because they will get sued. And they can't afford to be sued.
When you say the rider is removed, what are you referring to?
There's a rider in the Appropriations Committee that says that at any time, if any funds are appropriated, or it makes it illegal to appropriate any funds towards the management of the horses, if it could end up in the euthanization or the ultimate slaughter of the horses.
So they're blocking their own ability to honor and abide by their own law.
They're a house divided. I mean, that's where we're at.
And the consequence is your ecosystem's destroyed, your rangeland's destroyed, the horses are starving to death, and your productivity in your land from your grazers and your communities is shot down.
Absolutely, and that's what we're seeing right now. I can tell you right now that if we're in the same position next spring, our commission is going to be looking at steps necessary to remediate the damages.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Miller, that first issue with the Dixie National Forest, the time issue, is that because of the permitting? The reason was that we couldn't harvest because it take too long to get the permit, or?
It's NEPA process, so in order to go.
That's what I'm assuming. Thank you, just wanted that on the record. Thank you.